Rain hammered the streets of Crescent Bay like bullets against concrete. The kind of night where honest people stayed locked behind their doors, and the rest of the world belonged to shadows and secrets. Dante Moretti sat in the back of a bulletproof Lincoln Navigator, watching water cascade down tinted windows. His driver, Marco, knew better than to speak. The silence between them was thick, almost sacred. Dante had that effect on people. His presence demanded reverence, or at least survival instinct. He shouldn't have been here. Not tonight. Not in this forgotten corner of New Jersey where rust and regret clung to every storefront. A high-stakes meeting awaited him in Manhattan, the kind where empires shifted hands and blood debts were paid. But something had pulled him off course. A memory. A name. A face he'd buried under 15 years of violence and power. "Pull over," Dante said, his voice low and cold as winter steel. Marco's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. "Boss?" "There." Dante pointed to a dim neon sign barely visible through the downpour. Rosie's Diner. The letters flickered like a dying heartbeat. The place looked like it hadn't seen a renovation since Nixon was president. Cracked vinyl booths, yellowed ceiling tiles, windows fogged with decades of grease and desperation. But something about it called to him, or rather, someone. Dante stepped out into the rain, letting it soak through his $1,000 coat. He needed to feel something real, something that wasn't orchestrated power plays and calculated murders. The bell above the door chimed as he entered, a small, innocent sound that felt wrong in his world. Inside, the diner was nearly empty. A trucker hunched over coffee, a young couple whispering in a corner booth. And behind the counter, moving with practiced efficiency, was a woman who made Dante's world tilt on its axis. At first he couldn't be sure. The years had changed her, thinned her face, dulled the fire that once blazed in those emerald eyes. But when she turned and called out, "Seat yourself, I'll be right there," his breath caught in his throat. Elena Martinez. The girl who'd challenged him in every debate, outsmarted him in every test, made him feel like maybe, just maybe, there was more to life than the empire his father was building in blood and fear. She'd been accepted to Juilliard on a full scholarship, destined to become a world-renowned violinist. Her hands could make a violin weep or sing with equal mastery. Now those hands gripped a coffee pot stained with years of service. Dante slid into the farthest booth, keeping his face angled away. Recognition would complicate things. He wasn't the lanky teenager she'd known at St. Augustine Prep. He was Dante Moretti, the man who'd taken over the East Coast Syndicate when his father's enemies thought they'd destroyed the family. He was power, wealth, and death wrapped in tailored Italian suits. But sitting in this diner, watching Elena refill sugar dispensers with tired precision, he felt like that boy again. The one who'd loved her in silence, knowing his world would devour someone like her. She approached his table, order pad in hand, and their eyes met. For half a second, something flickered across her face. Recognition, confusion, then nothing. She'd learned to bury things too. "Coffee?" she asked, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 untold stories. "Black," Dante replied, keeping his tone neutral. She poured, and he noticed her hands, calloused, trembling slightly. These weren't the hands of a musician anymore. They were the hands of someone who'd surrendered dreams to survive. As she walked away, Dante pulled out his phone and typed a single message to his consigliere, Victor Chen. Need a full background. Subject: Elena Martinez, St. Augustine Prep, class of 2010. Priority: immediate and discreet. Victor's response came within seconds. "Already on it. Knew you'd ask the moment Marco reported your location." Dante almost smiled. Victor always was 3 steps ahead. He stayed in that booth for 2 hours, nursing cold coffee and watching Elena navigate between tables with mechanical precision. Every smile she gave customers was a mask. Every word she spoke was scripted by exhaustion. She'd become a ghost of who she was meant to be. And Dante Moretti, a man who'd built an empire on ruthlessness and fear, felt something crack inside his chest. Something he'd thought his father had beaten out of him years ago. Compassion, regret, maybe even love that never died, just hibernated under layers of violence. When Elena finally disappeared into the back room, Dante stood, left $300 bills under his empty cup, and walked into the rain. Marco had the car running. "Where to, boss?" Dante stared at the diner's flickering sign. "Home. But first, tell Victor I want answers by dawn. Everything. What happened to her? Why she's here? Who's responsible?" Marco nodded and pulled into traffic. Inside the diner, Elena returned to Dante's table and found the money. Her hands shook as she counted it. $300 for a cup of coffee. She looked toward the door, but whoever left it was already gone. For the first time in years, Elena Martinez allowed herself to wonder, what if? Dawn broke over Manhattan like a blade, sharp, cold, and unforgiving. Dante Moretti stood in his penthouse office, 53 floors above the city that feared his name. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline, but he wasn't admiring the view. His eyes were locked on the tablet in his hands, reading Victor's report with the focus of a man dissecting an enemy's weakness. Except Elena wasn't an enemy. She was something far more dangerous, a reminder that he'd once been human. The report was thorough, brutal in its detail. Elena Martinez had indeed enrolled at Juilliard in 2010, full scholarship, hailed as a prodigy who could make audiences weep with a single bow stroke. Her professors called her once in a generation. Industry legends wanted to mentor her. The world had been hers for the taking. Then her mother, Sofia Martinez, collapsed during a double shift at the textile factory where she'd worked for 20 years. Massive stroke. The medical bills came fast and merciless. Their insurance covered almost nothing. Elena's younger sister, Isabella, was only 14, brilliant, fragile, and suddenly without anyone to protect her. Elena withdrew from Juilliard after her first year. No fanfare, no goodbye performances. Just a simple letter. "Family circumstances require my immediate and indefinite attention. Thank you for believing in me." She'd returned to Crescent Bay and disappeared into the machinery of survival. 2 jobs, sometimes 3. Factory work during the day, waitressing at night, and weekend shifts at a dry cleaner when she could get them. For 13 years, she'd been invisible. A ghost keeping other ghosts alive. Dante set the tablet down and stared at his reflection in the window. The man looking back wore a $5,000 suit and commanded respect through fear. But underneath, buried deep, was the kid who'd sat behind Elena in calculus, watching her fingers drum against her desk like she was playing invisible symphonies while solving equations that made other students weep. He'd wanted to tell her then that he heard music in everything she did. But boys like him, sons of monsters, didn't get to love girls like her. His father, Salvatore Moretti, had made that clear the night he'd caught 16-year-old Dante sketching Elena's profile during a family business dinner. Salvatore had taken the sketch, held it over a candle until it burned, and said, "Men like us don't love, Dante. We own, we control, we dominate. Love makes you weak, and weak men die screaming." 2 years later, Salvatore was gunned down in a restaurant by the Calabresi family. Dante had been 20 years old, thrust into command of an empire built on blood and secrets. He'd proven himself by doing what his father never could. He'd won. Not just survived, but conquered. The Calabresi family no longer existed. Neither did anyone else who'd underestimated him, but victory had cost him everything soft, everything pure. He'd become exactly what his father wanted, a king without a heart, until last night. Until he'd seen Elena pouring coffee with hands that should have been holding a violin bow worth more than that entire diner. His phone buzzed. Victor Chen's name appeared on the screen. "Talk to me," Dante answered. "The mother's in a long-term care facility in Newark. Private room, which Elena somehow affords on her wages. Don't ask me how, the math doesn't work. The sister graduated from Rutgers last year, works as a social worker in Patterson. Clean record, good kid." Elena's been the glue holding it all together. Dante's jaw tightened. Debts? Medical debt's been sold to collections 3 times. Current holder is Apex Recovery Group. They've been threatening legal action for 6 months. Total owed $247,000. Buy the debt today, then bury it. Victor paused. Boss, if you're thinking about... I'm not thinking, Victor. I'm doing. Buy it, erase it, and make sure no one ever mentions it to her. She doesn't need to know where it went. Understood. What else? Dante turned away from the window. Find out who owns that diner. And Victor, be discreet. If she catches wind of this before I'm ready, it all falls apart. She won't hear it from me. But Dante? Victor's voice softened. A rare occurrence. This isn't a business move. You know that, right? Yeah, Dante said quietly. I know. He ended the call and walked to a locked cabinet built into the wall. Inside, hidden behind ledgers and contracts, was a small box he hadn't opened in 15 years. He pulled it out, sat down, and lifted the lid. Inside was a concert program from St. Augustine Prep's senior year showcase. Elena's name was printed in bold. Elena Martinez, violin. Paganini's Caprice, number 24. He remembered that night like it was yesterday. She'd walked onto that stage in a simple black dress, no jewelry, no pretense. Just her, the violin, and a silence so complete you could hear hearts beating in the audience. Then she'd played, and the world had stopped. Dante had watched from the back row, knowing he had no right to be there, knowing his father would beat him if he found out. But he'd needed to see her shine, needed to witness what real beauty looked like before his world dragged him into permanent darkness. After the performance, he'd waited by the side exit, gathering courage to speak to her. But Marco, already working for his father then, had found him first. Your old man knows you're here. We gotta go. Now. That beating had lasted an hour. Salvatore had used his fists, his belt, and his words. You think you're better than this family? You think some girl with a violin will save you from who you are? You're mine, Dante. And you'll be exactly what I made you to be. The next day at school, Elena had smiled at him in the hallway. You came last night. I saw you leaving. He'd wanted to tell her she was magic. Instead, he'd said nothing and walked away. It was the kindest thing he could do, spare her from his poison. Now, sitting in his fortress of power and isolation, Dante made a decision that would either redeem him or destroy everything he'd built. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number few people possessed. Dmitri, he said when the Russian answered. I need a favor, the legal kind. Dmitri Volkov laughed, a sound like gravel in a blender. Dante Moretti asking for legal favors? The world must be ending. I need you to set up a foundation. Arts funding, scholarships, community programs. Clean money, clean operation. And I need it done quietly. How quietly? My name doesn't appear anywhere. Ever. There was a pause. This is about a woman. Dante didn't answer, which was answer enough. I'll have the paperwork by tomorrow, Dmitri said. But Dante, be careful. Men like us don't get happy endings. I'm not looking for a happy ending, Dante replied. I'm trying to give someone else theirs. He hung up and stared at Elena's name on that old program. 13 years she'd sacrificed. 13 years she'd been invisible while he built an empire. That ended now. But Dante knew something Elena didn't. Something the report had buried in footnotes. Apex Recovery Group, the company holding her medical debt, was a front for the Rossetti family, his oldest rivals, the only organization still bold enough to challenge his territory. They'd been squeezing Elena deliberately, testing him, waiting to see if the rumors were true, waiting to confirm that Dante Moretti had a weakness. And now they knew. Which meant Elena wasn't just his past. She'd become a target in a war she didn't even know existed. Elena's alarm screamed at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before she'd set it. The cheap digital clock had been glitching for months, but replacing it meant spending money she didn't have. She silenced it with a practiced slap and dragged herself out of bed, her body protesting every movement. The apartment was silent. Isabella had moved out last year after graduation, insisting she could handle her own rent. Elena knew her sister sent half her paycheck back every month, disguised as borrowing money she'd never asked to be repaid. Pride ran in the Martinez family. Sometimes it was all they had left. Coffee. She needed coffee. But when she opened the cabinet, the canister was empty. She'd forgotten to buy more, stretching the last grounds across 3 days until they tasted like dirty water and regret. Elena closed her eyes and pressed her forehead against the cabinet door. "Just one morning," she whispered. "Just one morning where something goes right." Her phone buzzed, a text from Rosie, the diner's owner. "Can you cover Linda's morning shift?" She called in sick. Double pay. Double pay meant she could buy coffee, maybe even the good kind. Elena typed back, "I'll be there in 30. She showered in 4 minutes, a skill perfected over years of choosing between being clean and being late, and caught the 6:32 bus that smelled like diesel and broken dreams. Crescent Bay looked different in early morning light. Less threatening, more exhausted, like everyone here was just trying to survive until sunset. The diner was already open when she arrived, Rosie behind the counter brewing the first pot of the day. Rosie was 67, built like a bulldog, and had a heart that bled for every broken soul who walked through her doors. "You look like death," Rosie said, pouring Elena a cup without asking. "Feel worse." Elena gulped the coffee, burning her tongue. "Thanks for the shift. Thank me by not collapsing. You're running yourself into the ground, Mija." Elena tied her apron and grabbed an order pad. "Running's all I know how to do." The morning rush hit like a tidal wave. Construction workers, nurses ending overnight shifts, insomniacs seeking refuge in eggs and bacon. Elena moved through it mechanically, her smile a weapon she'd sharpened over years of customer service. By 10 a.m., the crowd had thinned. Elena was wiping down tables when the bell above the door chimed. She glanced up, ready with her automatic greeting, and the words died in her throat. 3 men walked in. They wore suits too expensive for Crescent Bay, moved with a synchronization that screamed danger and radiated the kind of authority that made normal people look away. The one in front was older, silver-haired, with eyes like polished obsidian. Victor Chen. She didn't know his name yet, but she'd learn it soon enough. "Elena Martinez?" he asked, his voice carrying the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Her survival instincts kicked in. "Who's asking?" Victor smiled, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. "Someone who'd like to speak with you, privately." Rosie appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Her grandmother had survived the Sandinistas. She knew predators when she saw them. "Elena doesn't go anywhere with strangers. State your business or get out." Victor didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his jacket, slowly, deliberately, and produced a manila envelope. He placed it on the counter. "Inside is a job offer, a legitimate one. My employer would like to meet with Ms. Martinez to discuss an opportunity that would significantly improve her current circumstances." Elena stared at the envelope like it might explode. "I don't understand. I didn't apply for anything." "No," Victor agreed. "But your talent did." He slid a second item across the counter, a tablet. On the screen was a video, grainy and old, from St. Augustine Prep's senior showcase. Elena, 17 years old, playing Paganini with a passion that had made the audience weep. Her breath caught. "How did you—" "Your performance was remarkable. Still is. My employer believes that talent like yours shouldn't be buried. He's prepared to make you an offer that reflects your true worth." Rosie picked up the envelope, opened it before Elena could stop her, and her eyes widened. She showed Elena the contents. A formal job offer, printed on heavy cardstock with embossed letterhead. Moretti Cultural Foundation, Arts Director, annual salary, $180,000. Elena's vision blurred. That number was more than she'd made in the last 3 years combined. "This is a mistake," she said, "or a scam. People don't just, this doesn't happen." Victor's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "Ms. Martinez, I assure you this is neither a mistake nor a scam. My employer has been searching for someone with your specific qualifications, your background in classical music, your understanding of struggle, your ability to see beauty in broken things. The foundation needs a director who understands that art isn't just about perfection, it's about survival." Who's your employer? Elena demanded, her voice shaking. Victor paused, choosing his words carefully. Someone who knew you a long time ago, someone who never forgot what you were capable of becoming. The diner seemed to tilt. Elena gripped the counter for balance. I need a name. Meet with him first, hear the offer, then decide. Victor placed a business card next to the envelope. There's a car outside. It'll take you to a meeting, 1 hour of your time. If you don't like what you hear, walk away. No strings, no obligations. But Ms. Martinez. His eyes locked onto hers. This is the door you've been waiting for. The only question is whether you're brave enough to walk through it. Rosie put a hand on Elena's shoulder. You don't have to go anywhere, mija. But Elena was already untying her apron. Something in Victor's words had awakened a part of her she'd buried. The part that used to believe impossible things could happen. The part that once dreamed. 1 hour, she said. Then I'm coming back. Victor nodded. 1 hour. The car was a black Mercedes, pristine and intimidating. Elena slid into the back seat, her heart hammering. They drove through Crescent Bay, then onto the highway toward Manhattan. The city rose before them like a fortress of glass and steel, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. They pulled up to a building in Tribeca, all modern architecture and whispered wealth. Victor led her through a marble lobby to a private elevator that required a key card. They ascended in silence. The doors opened to a penthouse office that stole Elena's breath. Art lined the walls, originals, not prints. Rothko, Basquiat, and tucked in a corner, almost hidden, a small painting she recognized from her art history classes. A Vermeer study, worth more than entire city blocks. But it was the man standing by the window who made her world stop spinning. He turned, and 13 years collapsed into nothing. Hello, Elena, Dante Moretti said softly. It's been a long time. Her knees nearly buckled. Dante? He looked nothing like the boy she remembered. That boy had been lean, nervous, always glancing over his shoulder like he expected punishment. This man was carved from marble and menace. Broad shoulders, tailored suit, eyes that had seen things she couldn't imagine. But when he smiled, just barely, she saw the ghost of who he'd been. You're probably confused, he began. Confused? Elena's voice cracked. You disappeared after graduation. No goodbye, no explanation. And now you're... What? Some kind of billionaire offering me charity? Not charity, Dante said firmly, stepping closer. Recognition. You were the most talented person at St. Augustine. You deserved every opportunity. But life took those from you. You don't know anything about my life. I know you withdrew from Juilliard to care for your mother. I know you've been working yourself to death for 13 years. I know your medical debt is destroying you. And I know. He paused, something raw flickering across his face. I know that you deserved better than what this world gave you. Elena's hands were shaking. How do you know all that? Because I needed to understand what happened to you. Why the girl who could make a violin sing was pouring coffee in a place that doesn't deserve her. That's creepy, Dante. That's stalking. You're right. He didn't defend himself. But here's what's not creepy. A legitimate job offer. The Moretti Cultural Foundation is real. We fund arts programs in underserved communities. We need someone with vision, someone who understands that art saves lives because it saved theirs. That's you. Elena laughed bitterly. I haven't touched a violin in 10 years. I'm nobody's savior. You're wrong. Dante's voice dropped, intense and urgent. You're exactly who these kids need. Someone who lost everything and kept fighting. Someone who knows what it costs to survive. She wanted to say no, wanted to run. But that number, $180,000, kept flashing in her mind. That was her mother's care facility paid for a year. That was Isabella not having to send half her salary home. That was breathing room she hadn't felt in over a decade. Why me? She whispered. Really? Why? Dante met her eyes, and for a moment his armor cracked. Because I owed you something I could never repay. and because I couldn't live with myself knowing I had the power to help and didn't. What could you possibly owe me? His answer was barely audible. Everything. Elena didn't accept the offer that day. She'd taken the folder, nodded politely, and left Dante's penthouse with her mind screaming in 10 different directions. Victor had driven her back to Crescent Bay in silence, understanding that some decisions needed space to breathe. Now, 3 days later, she sat in her apartment staring at the contract like it might burst into flames. The terms were absurd, generous to the point of insult. Full health insurance for her entire family, signing bonus of $50,000, an operating budget that made her dizzy, and buried in the fine print, a clause that made her throat tighten. The director shall have complete creative autonomy, with no interference from the board or foundation officers. Complete autonomy. From a man like Dante Moretti. She didn't trust it. Couldn't. Men didn't build empires by giving away power. And Dante Moretti, she'd done her research, wasn't just wealthy. He was dangerous. The articles were careful, legally scrubbed, but the implications bled through every carefully worded paragraph. Alleged ties to organized crime. Rumored connections to East Coast syndicates. Investigated but never charged. The boy she'd known at St. Augustine had been quiet, brilliant, and sad. Always sad, like he carried weights no one else could see. She'd wanted to know him better, but he'd kept everyone at arm's length, especially her. Now she understood why. Her phone rang. Isabella's name flashed on the screen. "Tell me you signed it," her sister said without preamble. "I'm thinking." "Elena, that's the problem. You think too much. This is the break you've been killing yourself for." "It's from Dante Moretti, Izzy. Do you know who that is?" A pause. "I Googled him. Yeah, he's probably connected to some shady stuff." "But Elena..." "So what? You're not joining the Mafia. You're directing an arts foundation, a legitimate one that's been operating for 5 years with 0 scandals." Elena rubbed her temples. "Why would he do this? We barely knew each other in high school." "Maybe he had a crush on you. Maybe he's trying to launder his conscience. Maybe he's genuinely trying to do something good. Does it matter? You've sacrificed everything for 13 years. Let someone sacrifice something for you." After they hung up, Elena walked to her closet and pulled down a case she hadn't opened in a decade. Inside, wrapped in silk that had yellowed with time, was her violin, a 1920s German instrument her grandmother had carried from Guadalajara, the only valuable thing their family had ever owned. Elena lifted it carefully, feeling the weight of memory and loss. She tucked it under her chin, positioned the bow, and drew it across the strings. The sound that emerged was discordant, painful, like a scream trapped in wood and wire. Her fingers had forgotten their positions. Her bow control was gone. She tried a simple scale and butchered it. Tears burned her eyes. She'd lost this too, along with everything else. But then, something shifted. Muscle memory deeper than thought took over. Her fingers found their marks. The bow steadied. And suddenly, she was playing the opening measures of Paganini's Caprice No. 24. The piece that had defined her. The piece that Dante had watched her perform all those years ago. It wasn't perfect. Her vibrato was weak, her transitions rough. But it was there. The music hadn't died. It had just been sleeping. When she finished, Elena was crying. Not from sadness, but from recognition. She'd thought that part of herself was dead, buried under years of survival. But it had only been waiting. She picked up her phone and typed a message to the number on Victor's card. "I accept. When do I start?" The response came within seconds. "Monday, 9 a.m. Welcome back, Ms. Martinez." The Moretti Cultural Foundation occupied 3 floors of a converted warehouse in Brooklyn. The space was stunning, exposed brick, soaring ceilings, natural light flooding through industrial windows. The first floor housed practice rooms and studios. The second was administrative offices. The third was hers. Elena stepped off the elevator Monday morning, wearing a dress she'd bought from a thrift store and shoes that pinched her feet. She felt like an imposter in a world that belonged to someone else. But the staff greeted her with genuine warmth. The program coordinators were young, passionate, eager to show her everything they'd built. They'd been running on autopilot, they explained, waiting for someone with vision to lead them. "We have the resources," said Marcus, a 26-year-old who coordinated the music programs. "We just need someone to tell us what matters, what actually helps these kids." Elena spent the morning touring facilities, meeting teachers, reviewing budgets. By lunch, her head was spinning with possibilities. By evening, she'd drafted a proposal that would triple their community outreach. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't notice Dante standing in her doorway until he spoke. "You're still here." Elena jumped, knocking over her coffee. "Jesus, you scared me." "Sorry." He stepped in, handed her napkins from her desk. "Most people leave by 6. It's almost 9. She glanced at her computer clock, stunned. "I lost track of time." Dante smiled, a real smile, not the careful mask he wore in public. "That's how I know you're the right person for this." They stood in awkward silence, the air between them charged with 13 years of unspoken things. Elena broke first. "Why did you really hire me, Dante?" He moved to her window, hands in his pockets, looking out over Brooklyn's glittering landscape. "You remember senior year? The Harrison Merit Scholarship?" "Of course. You won it." "I shouldn't have." He turned to face her. "My essay was desperate, manipulative even. I wrote about my father's business failures and our financial struggles. Made it sound like we were about to be homeless." Elena frowned. "Were you?" "No. We were never struggling. My father had money hidden in places the IRS couldn't dream of finding. But I needed that scholarship for appearances, for legitimacy, to make people think I was just another kid trying to escape poverty through education." Her chest tightened. "I don't understand." "You should have won, Elena. Your essay about music as a survival language, about your grandmother teaching you violin in a language you barely spoke, about finding home in notes when you had none in words. It was beautiful. True. But they gave it to me because my lie was more compelling than your truth. Dante, let me finish." His voice roughened. "I took something from you that day. Maybe it wouldn't have changed everything. Maybe you still would have had to leave Juilliard. But that scholarship was yours. And I stole it because I was being groomed to take over an empire built on stealing from people who deserved better." Elena's eyes burned. "You can't rewrite history." "No. But I can try to balance the scales. This job, this opportunity, it's not charity. It's a debt payment, one I should have made years ago." Before she could respond, Dante's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression went cold, the warmth evaporating like it had never existed. "I have to go," he said abruptly. "Emergency." "Is everything—" "Lock the doors when you leave. Victor will make sure you get home safely." He was already moving toward the elevator, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice dropping into a language she didn't recognize. Commands in Italian, sharp and brutal. The doors closed, and Elena was alone. She gathered her things slowly, unsettled by the transformation she'd witnessed. Dante had shifted from vulnerable to lethal in seconds, like flipping a switch. It reminded her that the man offering her redemption was also the man whom people feared enough to write careful, legally scrubbed articles about. Victor appeared as she locked her office. "Ready, Ms. Martinez?" "What happened? Why did Dante leave so fast?" Victor's expression was unreadable. "Business matter, nothing that concerns the foundation." But as they rode the elevator down, Elena heard him murmur something into his earpiece. "Rossetti crew hit one of our shipments. 3 men dead." "Dante's calling a sit-down." Her blood went cold. 3 men dead. This was the world Dante lived in. Not just wealth and influence, but violence and death. And somehow, she'd just agreed to orbit that world. The car ride home was silent. Elena stared out the window, watching Brooklyn blur into Crescent Bay, watching her old life and new life collide in ways she didn't understand. When they pulled up to her apartment, Victor finally spoke. "Ms. Martinez, Mr. Moretti is a complicated man. But his offer to you is genuine. Whatever else he is, he meant every word he said about you deserving this. How can you be sure?" Victor's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. Because in 15 years of working for him, I've never seen him care about anything the way he cares about making this right for you. He drove away, leaving Elena standing on the cracked sidewalk, contract in her bag, violin case in her hand, and a growing certainty that she'd just stepped into something far more dangerous than a job. Inside her apartment, she found an envelope slipped under her door. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. Old, faded, creased from years of handling. It was from St. Augustine Prep's senior showcase. Elena on stage, mid-performance, eyes closed, lost in the music. And in the background, barely visible in the last row, was a younger Dante Moretti, watching her like she was the only real thing in his world. On the back, written in handwriting she recognized from old class notes, were 4 words: "You saved me once." The Rossetti family didn't believe in subtle warnings. When they wanted attention, they made statements written in blood. Dante stood in a warehouse in Red Hook, staring at 3 body bags lined against the concrete wall. His men, loyal soldiers who'd been moving a shipment of legitimate art pieces for the Foundation's upcoming auction. Executed, not in a firefight, but kneeling. Single shots to the back of the head. They knew the route, Victor said quietly. Knew exactly when and where to hit. Dante's jaw clenched. Someone talked. Or someone's watching closer than we thought. Marco approached, phone in hand. "Boss, the Rossettis sent a message. They want to sit down. Tonight. Neutral ground." "They kill my men, then demand a meeting." Dante's voice was ice. "They're testing me." "They're declaring war," Victor corrected. "The question is why now?" Dante knew why. For months he'd been transitioning legitimate. The Foundation wasn't a front. It was real. Clean money doing actual good. He'd been quietly divesting from the bloodier aspects of his empire, trying to build something that wouldn't damn him completely. The old families saw it as weakness. "Set the meeting," Dante ordered. "But double security on the Foundation. And Victor, put someone on Elena, 24/7. She doesn't know it, she doesn't see them, but no one gets near her." Victor nodded, understanding immediately. "You think they know about her? They know I bought her debt. They know I gave her a job. That makes her leverage." Dante's hands curled into fists. "And I won't let her become collateral damage in my war." Elena's second week at the Foundation was transformative. She'd launched 3 new programs, secured partnerships with 5 public schools, and discovered she had a gift for making donors open their wallets. Her passion was infectious. When she talked about kids finding themselves through music, even jaded billionaires reached for their checkbooks. She was walking to the subway after another late night when she noticed him. A man in a gray jacket standing across the street pretending to check his phone. She'd seen him yesterday too, outside her apartment, and the day before, near the diner. Elena's survival instincts, honed by years in rough neighborhoods, screamed warnings. She ducked into a bodega, watching through the window. The man didn't follow, but he didn't leave either. She called the only number she trusted. "Victor, I think someone's following me." Gray jacket, brown hair, scar on his left cheek. Her blood chilled. "You know him? He's one of ours, Ms. Martinez. You're under protective surveillance. For your safety." "My safety from what?" Silence. Then, "I think you need to have this conversation with Dante." 20 minutes later, she was back in Dante's penthouse, fury overriding fear. He stood by his window, drink in hand, looking older than his 31 years. "You're having me followed?" she demanded. "Protected," he corrected quietly. "There's a difference." "From what?" "Dante, what aren't you telling me?" He turned, and the weight in his eyes made her breath catch. "There are people who want to hurt me, and the best way to do that is through people I care about. We barely know each other. That doesn't make it less true." He set down his glass, moved closer. "Elena, the world I come from doesn't forgive weakness, and caring about someone, that's the ultimate weakness." "Then why give me this job? Why put me in danger?" "Because I'm trying to build something different, something clean. The Foundation is real, no dirty money. No hidden agendas. But my enemies see it as me going soft. And they're going to test that by targeting what I'm trying to protect. Elena's voice dropped. You're saying I'm bait. No, I'm saying you're someone I won't let them touch. His intensity was frightening. I have men watching you, your sister, your mother's facility. No one will hurt you. I promise you that. You can't promise that. Watch me. She should have run, should have quit, disappeared back into obscurity where she was safe. But instead she asked, who are they? The Rossetti family. They've controlled certain operations in Jersey for decades. We've had an understanding, but I've been pushing them out of territories they consider theirs. They're pushing back. By targeting me. They bought your medical debt 6 months ago. They've been squeezing you deliberately, waiting to see if I'd react. When I erased that debt and gave you this job, I confirmed what they suspected, that you matter to me. Elena sat heavily on his couch. This is insane. I know, and I'm sorry. But I won't apologize for helping you. I'd make the same choice again, even if it puts me in danger. Dante knelt in front of her, his eyes burning with something raw and honest. Elena, you've been in danger your whole life. Poverty, debt, exhaustion slowly killing you. That's just a different kind of violence. At least now you have someone fighting back with you. She wanted to hate him for dragging her into this. Instead, she found herself asking, what happens at this meeting tonight? I remind them why people fear my name, and I make it clear that you're untouchable. And if they don't listen, his smile was cold, terrible. Then I remind them what happens to families who forget their place. The meeting took place in a closed restaurant in Little Italy, Romano's, a place where deals were made and bodies were buried, sometimes in that order. Dante arrived with Victor and 4 soldiers, each carrying enough firepower to start a small war. Anthony Rossetti sat at the head table, flanked by his consigliere and muscle. He was 58, silver-haired, with the kind of smile that preceded terrible things. Dante Moretti, Anthony said, spreading his hands. The prince becomes king. Your father would be proud. My father's dead because he underestimated his enemies. I don't make that mistake. Yet here you are, making yourself vulnerable. Anthony leaned forward. A charity foundation? Art programs? You've gone soft, boy. I've diversified. There's a difference. And the girl, Elena Martinez, that diversification too? The temperature in the room dropped. Dante's men tensed, hands moving toward concealed weapons. Careful, Dante said softly. You're about to cross a line. Anthony laughed. We already crossed it when we bought her debt. Been squeezing her for months, watching to see if you'd bite. And you did. So predictable. You want to talk debts? Let's discuss the 300 grand you owe me from the Newark shipment. Consider it payment for a lesson. Don't let personal feelings compromise business. Anthony's smile vanished. Give us the Red Hook territory, or we'll take something you value more. Dante stood slowly, buttoning his jacket. You touch her, you die. Not quick, not clean. I'll dismantle your family piece by piece until no one remembers the Rossetti name existed. Big threats from a man who's forgotten how to pull a trigger. What happened next was poetry written in violence. Dante moved like lightning, grabbed Anthony's consigliere's wine glass and smashed it across his face, then pulled a gun none of them had seen and pressed it to Anthony's temple before his guards could react. I haven't forgotten anything, Dante whispered. I've just been choosing mercy. But for you, I'll make an exception. Victor's men had weapons drawn, creating a standoff. Blood dripped from the consigliere's ruined face. Last chance, Dante said. Walk away from Elena, forget Red Hook, and we maintain peace. Or test me and find out why people still cross the street when they see my name. Anthony's hands were shaking. You're making a mistake. No, I'm correcting one. Dante released him, stepped back. This meeting's over. They left Romano's knowing war was inevitable, but Dante had bought time to secure Elena, time to fortify his positions, time to prepare for the storm. What he didn't know was that the storm was already inside his walls. Marcus, the young program coordinator Elena had befriended, stood in a bathroom stall at the Foundation, phone pressed to his ear. "He's protecting her around the clock," Marcus whispered. "No way to get close without starting a war." The voice on the other end was patient, calculating. "Then we don't take her. We frame her. Make Moretti doubt everything. Destroy the trust. Destroy the protection." "How?" "You work in her office. You have access to her computer. It's time to earn what we're paying you." Marcus ended the call, stared at his reflection in the mirror. He'd taken the Rossetti money 6 months ago when his gambling debts became death sentences. Now he was in too deep to escape. He thought about Elena, her passion, her kindness, how she'd believed in him when no one else did, and he was about to destroy her. But in this world, loyalty was a luxury only the powerful could afford. He walked back to his desk and began planning Elena's downfall. 3 weeks passed in fragile peace. Elena threw herself into work, trying to ignore the armed shadows that followed her everywhere. The Foundation was thriving. Enrollment had tripled, donations were pouring in, and she'd just secured a partnership with Lincoln Center. She was reviewing grant applications late one Thursday when her computer froze. The screen went black, then filled with cascading code. "What the hell?" Marcus appeared in her doorway. "Everything okay?" "My computer just crashed. Can you—" "I'll call it." He was already pulling out his phone, but Elena caught something in his expression. Fear, guilt. The IT specialist arrived within minutes, one of Dante's people. She'd learned to recognize them. He examined her computer, his face darkening with each passing second. "Ms. Martinez, I need to take this, now." "What's wrong?" "Please, just let me secure it." An hour later, Elena sat in Dante's office while Victor laid out the evidence. Her computer had been used to access CNS proprietary files, encryption algorithms worth millions. The breach was traced to offshore servers linked to the Rossetti family. "That's impossible," Elena said, her voice hollow. "I didn't access anything. I barely understand half the technical systems." "The logs show otherwise," Victor said gently. "Your credentials, your workstation, your access times." Dante hadn't spoken. He stood by his window, back turned, radiating a cold fury that terrified her more than any weapon. "Dante," Elena pleaded, "you have to believe me. I would never—" "Stop." His voice cut like glass. "Just stop." He turned, and the man looking at her wasn't the one who'd offered redemption. This was the kingpin, the killer, the monster people whispered about. "I gave you everything," he said quietly. "Trusted you. Defended you, and you sold me out to my enemies. No, someone's framing me. That's what they all say." He moved closer, and she'd never felt more afraid. "You know what I do to traitors, Elena? What I'm expected to do?" She was crying now, shaking. "Please, you know me." "I thought I did." He turned to Victor. "Lock down her accounts, revoke all access, and get her out of my sight before I do something I'll regret." "Dante, wait! Get out!" His roar echoed through the penthouse. Victor took her arm gently. "Come on, Miss Martinez." As she was led to the elevator, Elena looked back. Dante stood alone, framed by his city of glass and steel, looking more isolated than any human should be. The doors closed, severing whatever fragile thing they'd built. Elena was escorted back to her apartment, her protection detail now feeling like prison guards. She sat in the dark, replaying everything, searching for answers. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "They're using you. Check the program coordinator's desk, 3rd drawer. A friend." She stared at the message. A trap? Or the truth? At 3 a.m., she made a decision. She called the one person who might still listen. "Isabella, I need your hacking skills, and I need you not to ask questions." Her sister arrived an hour later with a laptop and determination. "What are we doing?" "Breaking into the Foundation server, finding out who really accessed those files." "Elena, that's—" "I know, but I'm already buried. Might as well dig for the truth." What they found in the metadata changed everything. Isabella's fingers flew across the keyboard, her eyes reflecting streams of code. This is insane. Their security is military grade. Can you get in? I didn't say I couldn't. Isabella grinned despite the danger. Just that whoever built this knew what they were doing. 20 minutes later, they were inside the Foundation's server logs. Isabella pulled up the breach timeline, cross-referencing access points and IP addresses. Look at this, Isabella pointed. The access shows your credentials, but the IP address bounces between 3 locations in 40 seconds. That's physically impossible unless you're teleporting. Someone cloned my login? More than that. They spoofed your device signature, your typing patterns, even mimicked your mouse movements. This wasn't some script, kiddie. This was professional-grade hacking. Isabella scrolled deeper. But they made one mistake. See this? A timestamp, 11:47 p.m., the night of the breach. I was here, Elena said, in my apartment. My work laptop was locked in my desk at the Foundation. Exactly. Which means someone with physical access to the building used an internal terminal. Isabella pulled up building access logs. Only 3 people were in the office at that time. Maintenance, night security, and Marcus Chen. Elena's stomach twisted. He stayed late that night. Said he was catching up on paperwork. Isabella dug deeper, pulling financial records that made both sisters go pale. He's been receiving payments from a shell company registered in Delaware. $50,000 over 6 months. The Rossettis. Has to be. Isabella looked at her sister. Elena, you need to show this to Dante. Now. He won't see me. He thinks I betrayed him. Then make him see you. Because if Marcus is feeding them information, everyone at the Foundation is in danger. Getting past Dante's security wasn't easy, but Elena had one advantage. They still thought they were protecting her, not imprisoning her. She slipped out at dawn, took 3 different subway lines to shake any tail, and showed up at Dante's building before most of the city woke. The lobby guard recognized her. Ms. Martinez, you're not cleared to... Tell Victor it's about Marcus Chen and $50,000 in Rossetti money. He'll want to hear this. 5 minutes later, she was in the elevator heading to Dante's penthouse. He was awake, dressed in workout clothes, bruised knuckles wrapped in tape. He'd been in the gym, punishing his body because he couldn't punish the situation. You have 60 seconds, he said without looking at her. Elena handed him Isabella's printed evidence. Marcus has been on the Rossetti payroll for months. He used an internal terminal to access those files using cloned credentials. The IP logs prove I wasn't even in the building. Dante studied the documents, his expression unreadable. This could be fabricated. It's not. Check the bank records yourself. Call your people. But Dante, her voice broke. You've known me since we were 17. You know I wouldn't do this. He finally looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was devastating. I wanted to believe that, but in my world, everyone has a price. Everyone betrays eventually. Not me, never you. Why? The word was raw, desperate. Why would you stay loyal to someone like me? You've seen what I am, what I do. Elena stepped closer, fearless. Because underneath the monster everyone sees, I still recognize the boy who sat behind me in calculus. The one who pretended he didn't care but always made sure I had lunch money when mine ran out. The one who watched me play violin like I was something sacred. Dante's armor cracked. You knew? I always knew. She took his wrapped hand in hers. You're not as good at hiding as you think. Before he could respond, Victor burst through the door. Boss, we have a problem. Marcus Chen just accessed the Foundation's emergency funds. He's withdrawing $2 million and disappeared. Dante's grief transformed instantly into rage. Where? Heading toward Newark, the Rossetti territory. Lock down the Foundation, full security sweep. I want every device, every file examined. And Victor? Dante's smile was predatory. Ready the team. We're going hunting. Elena grabbed his arm. What are you going to do? What I should have done weeks ago. End this. By killing Marcus? By showing the Rossettis what happens when they infiltrate my family. He pulled free gently. Stay here. Victor will keep you safe. Dante. But he was already gone, moving with lethal purpose. The warehouse in Newark was exactly where Victor's intelligence said it would be. Marcus was inside, handing over files to Anthony Rossetti's men, collecting his blood money. Dante's team moved like ghosts, 12 men, heavily armed, surrounding the building in coordinated silence. When Dante gave the signal, they struck. The Rossetti soldiers never had a chance. Dante's people were better trained, better equipped, and infinitely more motivated. Within 3 minutes, 5 men were down, and Marcus was on his knees, hands zip-tied, sobbing. Dante walked through the carnage like death incarnate. "Where's Anthony?" "I don't know, I swear. They just told me to deliver the files and—" "You betrayed Elena." Dante's voice was calm, which somehow made it more terrifying. "She trusted you, believed in you, and you destroyed her to save yourself. I had debts. They were going to kill me. They were going to kill you eventually. I'm going to kill you now." Dante raised his gun. "Wait!" Marcus screamed. "Anthony has something planned. Tonight. He's going after the Foundation directly. He wants to send a message by burning it down during the youth concert. All those kids—" Dante's blood froze. The youth concert. Elena's project. 200 children from underserved communities performing for their families. Scheduled for 7 p.m. It was 5:45 now. How's he getting in? Fire exits. He's got men with accelerants. The plan is to trap everyone inside. Dante looked at Victor. "Get every available man to the Foundation. Evacuate that building. Now." "What about him?" Victor gestured to Marcus. Dante pressed the gun to Marcus's temple, and for a moment, the trigger finger tightened. Then he lowered the weapon. "Tie him up. Leave him for the feds with all the evidence. Let him rot in a cell where he belongs." He was already running for the car. If Anthony succeeded, Elena would die thinking Dante had abandoned her, that he'd believed her betrayal. He couldn't let that be his last truth. The Foundation was alive with excitement when Dante's convoy arrived. Families filled the lobby, children in their best clothes clutching instruments, the air humming with nervous energy. Elena stood near the stage, coordinating last-minute details, unaware of the nightmare racing toward her. Dante burst through the doors with Victor and 20 armed men, and the celebration atmosphere shattered instantly. "Everybody out! Now!" Dante's voice cut through the confusion. "This is not a drill. Evacuate immediately." Parents grabbed children, teachers herded students toward exits. Elena pushed through the chaos toward Dante. "What's happening?" "Rossetti's planning to burn this place down with everyone inside. We have maybe 10 minutes. He grabbed her shoulders. "You need to leave. Now. Not without making sure every kid gets out." "Elena, these are my kids, Dante. I'm not abandoning them." He saw the steel in her eyes and recognized it, the same fire that had made her sacrifice everything for her family. "Fine, but you stay with me." They moved through the building in coordinated teams. Victor's men swept every floor, every closet, every bathroom. The count was agonizing: 187, 193, 198. "2 kids missing," a teacher screamed. "The Ramirez twins. They were exploring backstage." Elena was already running. Dante caught up with her in the backstage labyrinth, a maze of dressing rooms and storage spaces. They found the twins hiding in a costume closet, playing dress-up, oblivious to danger. "Come on, sweethearts," Elena coaxed them out. "We're playing a new game. Fastest ones to the front door win." The children giggled and ran. Elena started to follow when Dante grabbed her arm. "Smell that?" Gasoline. Strong and close. They turned the corner and found him, Anthony Rossetti himself, flanked by 4 men, all carrying accelerant containers. He smiled when he saw Dante. "Right on time. I was hoping you'd get here before the show started." Dante positioned himself between Anthony and Elena. "This ends now. No more games." "Oh, this isn't a game anymore." Anthony pulled out a lighter. "This is a funeral. For your little redemption project and the girl you thought you could save." He flicked the lighter, flame dancing. "Tell me, Dante, what burns faster? Buildings or dreams?" What happened next was chaos distilled into seconds. Anthony threw the lighter toward puddles of gasoline. Dante fired twice, killing two of Anthony's men and hitting Anthony's shoulder. The lighter tumbled through the air in slow motion. Elena dove, impossibly, and caught it before it hit the accelerant, closing her fist around the flame. The pain was instant, searing. She screamed, but didn't let go. Dante's team flooded in. Victor shot the remaining soldiers while Dante grabbed Anthony by his wounded shoulder, pressing until the old man howled. "You lose," Dante whispered. "Your family's finished. Your territory's mine, and you're going to spend whatever life you have left in a cell, knowing you failed." Sirens wailed outside. The NYPD and FBI were converging. Victor had called them en route, ensuring official witnesses to the Rossetti attack. Dante released Anthony to the arriving agents, then turned to Elena. She was cradling her burned hand, tears streaming down her face, but her eyes were fierce. "You're insane," he said, carefully examining her injury. "You could have lost your hand. Would have been worth it." Her voice was tight with pain. "These kids deserve their concert." Paramedics rushed in, treating Elena's burns while federal agents swarmed the building. Anthony Rossetti was led away in handcuffs, screaming threats that no one believed anymore. His empire was crumbling, and everyone knew it. Outside, families were being reunited with their children. The crisis was over, but the concert was canceled. Elena watched from the ambulance, heartbroken. "They practiced for months," she said quietly. Dante made a decision. He walked to the gathered families, raised his voice. "The concert's been moved. Tomorrow night, Lincoln Center, main stage. Every family's invited. Transportation provided. And Ms. Martinez," he looked back at her, "will be conducting." The crowd erupted in applause. Elena stared at him, this complicated man who'd brought chaos and salvation in equal measure. "You can't just rent Lincoln Center overnight. I own 3 seats on their board. Watch me." He sat beside her in the ambulance. "And Elena, I'm sorry for doubting you, for not seeing the frame until it was almost too late. You came back," she said simply. "That's what matters." The paramedic finished bandaging her hand. "You'll need surgery to prevent scarring, but you're lucky, no nerve damage." As they closed the ambulance doors, Dante stayed with her. "I'm not leaving you again. Promise?" "I don't make promises lightly." He took her uninjured hand. "But for you, I promise everything." The ambulance pulled away, sirens fading into the New York night. Behind them, the foundation stood intact, scarred but surviving, just like the 2 people who'd fought to protect it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, they'd won. 6 months later, Lincoln Center glowed against the Manhattan skyline. Inside, 2,000 people filled every seat for the Moretti Foundation's annual gala, the event that had become the city's most coveted invitation. Elena stood backstage, adjusting her emerald gown, still marveling at how far she'd come. Her hand had healed with minimal scarring, though she'd never forget the moment she'd caught that lighter. Some scars were worth bearing. "You ready?" Isabella appeared, stunning in burgundy. She'd joined the Foundation's board, bringing her tech expertise to expand their digital programs. "Never been more ready." Elena smiled, but her eyes kept searching the crowd through the curtain gap. "He's out there," Isabella said knowingly. "Front row, looking like he might murder anyone who breathes too loud during your speech." Elena laughed. Dante had been different these past months, softer and private, though still terrifying to his enemies. The Rossetti family had collapsed after Anthony's arrest. 3 other families had tried to fill the vacuum. None succeeded. Dante's empire was now uncontested, and he was using that power to transform it. Legitimate businesses, legal operations. The Foundation had expanded to 12 cities. He was building something that might actually outlive him without blood attached to its legacy. But more than that, he was building something with her. The curtain rose. Elena walked to the podium, and the applause was thunderous. She waited for silence, then began. 13 years ago, I put my violin in a case and thought I'd never open it again. I thought survival and dreams couldn't coexist. I was wrong." She paused, finding Dante's eyes in the crowd. "Someone once told me that buried dreams aren't dead. They're just waiting for the right moment to breathe again. She told them about the kids in their programs, children who'd found voices through music, purpose through art, futures through believing someone saw their potential. She told them about second chances and the people brave enough to offer them. When she finished, the standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Backstage, Dante was waiting. He pulled her into his arms, and for a moment they were just two people who'd found each other against impossible odds. "You were magnificent," he murmured against her hair. "We," she corrected. "We were magnificent." He pulled back, his expression suddenly serious. "Elena, I need to tell you something." Her heart quickened. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's—" He struggled with words, this man who commanded empires with syllables. "I've spent my whole life taking things. Territory, power, respect. But you're the only thing I want to deserve." He knelt and Elena's world tilted. "I'm still a dangerous man. My past doesn't disappear because I want it to. But my future—" He opened a small box containing a ring that caught light like captured stars. "My future only makes sense if it's with you." Elena was crying, laughing, shaking. "Dante Moretti, are you asking me to marry a reformed mob boss?" "I'm asking you to marry a man who loves you more than he fears what that love makes him." "Yes." The word was immediate, certain. "Yes, 1,000 times. Yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, stood, and kissed her while applause erupted around them. The staff, the board members, everyone who'd watched their impossible love story unfold. Victor appeared, grinning. "Boss, there's press asking for photos." "Let them wait," Dante said, not releasing Elena. "Some moments are just ours." Later, during the gala's dinner, Dante stood to make a toast. "Most of you know my reputation. Some of it's deserved. But what you might not know is that 15 years ago, I watched a girl play violin like she was translating God's thoughts into sound. I thought she was too good for this world. Turns out she was exactly what this world needed." He raised his glass toward Elena. "To second chances, to buried dreams that refuse to die, and to the woman who reminded me that power without purpose is just noise." The room drank, but Elena only had eyes for Dante. As the night wound down, they escaped to the rooftop garden, away from cameras and crowds. The city sprawled beneath them, glittering and infinite. "What happens now?" Elena asked, leaning against him. "Now we build something neither of us could create alone. The foundation expands. We fund programs in 20 cities by next year. We prove that people from places like Crescent Bay deserve everything the world tries to deny them. And us?" Dante turned her to face him. "Us? We get married somewhere your mother can attend. We adopt the first kid from our program who needs a home. We fight, we compromise, we figure it out." He smiled, genuinely. "We live, Elena. Finally, we actually live." She kissed him, tasting hope and future and all the impossible things that had somehow become real. Below them, the city hummed with 8 million stories. But theirs, the Mafia boss and the waitress, the broken boy and the buried dreamer, theirs was the one that proved second chances existed. Not through rescue, not through saving, but through seeing someone fully, believing in them completely, and choosing them despite every reason not to. In a world built on power and fear, they'd built something different, something that couldn't be bought or taken or destroyed by violence. They'd built love, and in the end, that was the most dangerous weapon of all. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this one.